5 working-class rockers had escaped a life in the steel mills of northern England by forming a heavy metal band called Judas Priest. But after years of dues paying, their 1974 debut album Rock-a-Rolla tanked, leaving the Priests in dire financial straits.
In those early days of literally having nothing to survive on, living on beans on toast and everybody crammed in one room together, I mean, it was just based on faith.
You do get to the point where you feel maybe the band's finished, the career's over. They're desperate times.
The group managed to release another album with Gull Records in the fall of '76. And although it got good reviews, Sad Wings of Destiny quickly fell to earth. Heavy metal had no place in an English music scene suddenly overtaken by punk rock.
In seemingly one devastating blow, the punk hit the British Isles, and a lot of musicians were hanging up their rock paraphernalia, which is kind of sad in a way.
By the winter of '76, the Priests were giving themselves last rites, only to be abruptly resurrected by an album deal with Columbia Records USA. The American label felt the time was right for the boys from Britain to bombard the States.
I couldn't believe it. I was so ecstatic about, traversing the Atlantic.
It was like pinch me time, have we really made it?
Priest quickly released their first album with Columbia, Sin After Sin, and began pounding the pastures of what would become heavy metal's promised land. In the summer of '77, they opened for REO Speedwagon on an extensive U.S. tour, showcasing a hard-driving sound that few in the audience had ever heard before.
Metal at that time was Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple. I mean, there wasn't really a screaming metal scene at that point. Judas Priest were the first band that really took the music out of psychedelic and into just the screaming guitars.
We would go on stage and people would just stand there with their jaws on the floor. I couldn't believe it. What the hell is this? What is this music?
It was a combination between being dumbstruck, weighing us up, and thinking, I think this band are pretty good, but not really absolutely sure.
By the end of the tour, Judas Priest had won a committed following in the U.S., one that grew with each hard-rocking record and ear-splitting anthem.
There's something very natural about driving along one of the highways over there and turning the radio on and hearing Judas Priest. We were made for America, and America fell in love with the band. The youth of America did, very quickly.
They were singing about rebellion, and that was something that American youth were ready for. They almost created a social class with their music because it gave kids a place to go to be rebellious.
But as the Priest popularity grew, so did frontman Rob Halford's frustration over his hidden homosexuality.
I'm too concerned about protecting what I've got around me, not particularly myself, but certainly concerned for Ken, for Glenn, for Ian, for Judas Priest, for the fans. Putting me second instead of first.
Hoping to find an onstage outlet for his angst, Rob visited a sex shop in London.
I just came back with all of the necessary S&M accoutrements that all metal singers should have on stage and home. Up until that moment, the look had not been completely tied in as I felt to the sound. So putting on this kind of stuff, suddenly, you look at yourself in the mirror, you listen to the music, and it just connects.
The look would be adopted by metal bands and fans from LA to London. Few knew that they were worshiping a metal god who was expressing his homosexuality on stage.
Let's face it, I was expressing myself every night when I went out in all that leather stuff. I was going out on stage every night looking like that. It was like Glenn from the Village People, you know, and people weren't getting it.
Rob completed a metal makeover by roaring on stage riding a Harley and making a bullwhip part of the show.
If I'd be on stage and I'd see somebody that was getting into the whip, I'd go, "You like this, do you? Well, some more." And we'd start wailing on their ass.
Inevitably, we had some badges made that said, "I've been whipped by Rob Halford," and fans used to go crazy over these badges.
It's amazing how people will, you know, get into a good thrashing. We all need a good thrashing now and again.
Judas Priest was whipping up a frenzy of interest with their looks and their music. But along with their increasing success, the band would experience some stunning setbacks. Next, meltdown of a metal maniac.
You fall to your knees and you literally do ask God to help you.
And later, Priest stands accused of unholy deeds.
James Vance actually pointed the finger at the music.
When Behind the Music continues. Years after they begun forging a new cast of heavy metal, Judas Priest was ready for the headbanging big time. So in the summer of 1980, they unleashed their breakthrough album, a classic compilation of cuts called British Steel.
Breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law, breaking the law.
Their first albums were a little darker, more sinister, more monotone in the music, but I think that just boosted them into the super heavy metal, hardcore rock and roll status of probably the biggest hard rock band in the world at that time.
That's where they started to solidify themselves as the pace car for every other band to try to maintain, you know, a pace with.
Hailed as the leaders of the new wave of British metal, Priest struck again while the iron was hot. In the summer of '82, they released Screaming for Vengeance, the album that contained their biggest hit, You've Got Another Thing Coming. The group capped a triumphant world tour with a set at the US Festival in March '83, performing before 300,000 screaming fans.
They were pretty much on top of the world. They could do no wrong at that point, and actually they even got bigger and bigger.
Everything we did turned to success. We'd average 15,000 people a night, you know. Sometimes it was only 10,000. I say only 10,000.
The thing about Judas Priest is they never ever gave half a show. It was always 100%. And when the audience left the auditorium, they were, like, exhausted.
By the middle of a decade drenched in decadence, Priests were rulers of the metal kingdom, and no one partied harder than Rob Halford.
Running on cocaine and Jack Daniels. I mean, excess in the biggest possible words. We pigged out on sex and drugs and rock and roll.
She had martinis at all hours of the day, yes. Marvellous how we got through it, really.
But the band's bond only went so far. In a backstage world where available women were everywhere, Rob felt isolated and alone.
You come off stage, you know, there'd be all these girls and so on in the dressing room. That wasn't my world. I didn't fit in, you know. There was no place for me to go because that's not where I felt I belonged. I wasn't with my own people.
The other priests had long known about Rob's sexuality and were supportive within the group, but Rob wasn't encouraged to reveal his secret to the public.
It's fair to say that we were happy with Rob, with his image. We didn't want anything to happen that was going to change that.
I can't pretend to imagine the pressure that placed on him because the band were perceived as being so macho. So for him suddenly to reveal that he was gay, I suppose was a problem.
The pressure had been building for years, and the metal god was beginning to melt.
There is a tremendous feeling of a lack of self-esteem and emptiness and complete hopelessness. And that sounds bizarre when you walk on stage in front of 20,000 people and scream your lungs out. But most of those shows, I was smashed out of my mind.
I've been at shows where I've known he's had too much to drink. He's done the whole set, and I've thought, I don't know how, he's managed to do that.
I was just a full-on, roaring, drug-taking, whacked out of my mind metal mania.
Masking his feelings was getting harder and harder for Rob Halford. In November '85, while Judas Priest was recording the album Turbo, their frontman spun out of control.
My daily routine was I'd get up around 6 in the evening and slug down some big bottles of whatever just to get out of bed. I was ripping phones off walls, trying to drive drunk, just a really obnoxious, hateful son of a bitch.
Finally, after a late-night rehearsal session in Phoenix, Arizona, Rob hit rock bottom.